How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. There's a Daf Ayin Beis, Daf 72 of Masechta Avodah Zarah. I forgot to put in my earplugs 1 second. Let me do that so that I can focus real good. Okay. Now, Chaver, here's the dealio with Daf Ayin Beis and Masechta Avodah Zarah. Chaver, Daf Ayin Beis is mamish devalt. My voice, schwer, schwach. My voice is schwach, but my heart is still stark. Now it's Sunday, which means I had the ganze Shabbos, I had the whole Shabbos to rest. I was hoping by today my voice would be ala kefak, would be gewaldig. But the Rebbeinu Shalom, he says, no, you're not ready. Okay, if the Rebbeinu Shalom says I'm not ready, I'm not ready. But I am ready to learn Daf Ayin Beis of Masechta Avodah Zarah with all my friends at Babylon Talmud. So, Chaver, the voice is schwach, but the heart is gewalt. So, hopefully by tomorrow it'll be better, Anyways, on Daf Ayin Beis of Masechta Avodah Zarah, there's 2 topics. In the first part, we wrap up the previous Mishnah. We wrap up the topic from the previous Mishnah of the requirement to set a price before making a kinyan. Then in order for a kinyan to be chal, you have to have agreed on a price first. We're going to start off wrapping up that sugya. Once we wrap up that sugya, we then get to our next topic, which is Neetzoke. Neetzoke has been coming up here and there throughout the Masechta. We saw it on Daf Nun Hey or so, with the gargusni in the wine vat, with the dregs and stuff anyways, we saw talking about the gargusni over there, the Neetzoke over there. I think yesterday already we had Shmamina Neetzoke Chibor. So today we're going to get back, but we're really going to delve into more the concept of Neetzoke. Neetzoke, of course, being like a stream. Okay, so like, for example, let's say you have a can of Coca-Cola and you're pouring the Coca-Cola from that can into a bowl. And now the Coca-Cola is collecting in the bowl, and you have Coca-Cola in the can, you have Coca-Cola in the bowl, and you have a stream connecting the two. That's Neetzoke. The kasha is Neetzoke Chibor. Neetzoke Eno Chibor is considered like the Coke in the can and the Coke in the bowl are connected by way of the stream. Yes, no, that's Neetzoke. That's what we are going to discuss today. Chaver, don't worry, I did not get sick by drinking Coca-Cola. I drink Coca-Cola about once every long time. When's the last time I drank Coca-Cola? Somebody came over for a Shabbos Suda several months back. I don't even remember. Maybe 6 months ago. And he brought Coke. I don't know why, but he brought Coke and it was sitting in my fridge for a while. I think eventually I drank it. That may have been the first time I drank Coke in ages. So I did not get sick because of Coke. I think I got sick due to a lack of sleep, a lack of food. Let's start with that. And maybe too much air conditioning. Now my air conditioning is like dripping. I need to find an AC guy. Who's got anybody have an AC guy to recommend? I tried reaching out to this guy, but I don't know if the message went through. Okay, Chaver. We're going to start on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. We're going to start. Maybe I'll do some whispering too. Hopefully you could hear me. Maybe I'll do a combination of whispering and barely audibly talking. Okay. We're going to start at Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. About 4 lines from the top. How Gavir de Amalei lechavrid. So Shimon says to his friend Ruvain, this is ridiculous. I got to be able to talk. I think I'm just going to have to go for it. Oh gosh, I think I'm just gonna have to go for it, and hopefully it won't make things worse. Okay, because I gotta talk. Otherwise, how are we gonna do this? I will gather the omelet lechaver. Shimon says to Reuven, you hear this? Shimon says to Reuven, hey Reuven, look, this property that we're on right now, it's my property. I'm not currently planning to sell it, but there is a price that I'm thinking of. If I sell it, I'll sell it for $1 million. And when that day comes, I will call you on that day and we'll make a deal. And they even make a kinyan. Maybe he gives him, how would that work? Maybe Reuven would then give like a suitor to Shimon, and Shimon would pick it up. Yeah, I think that's how it worked, right? That Reuven would maybe give Shimon like a pen or something, right? Reuven would give Shimon his pen, I think, and then Shimon would pick up the pen and be mischai, and make a kinyan, commit that when the time comes. Yeah, I believe that's it. Reuven, I think, would give Shimon his pen. Shimon would pick it up. Let's say if they did a kinyan suitor, and Shimon would make a commitment by way of the kinyan that when the time comes to sell the field, Shimon is going to give Reuven a call. Azoy. So they made a kinyan. They discussed price. Made a kinyan. So when the time comes, Shimon committed to giving Reuven a call and to selling it to Reuven. I got a glass of water here. Hopefully it'll help. I feel like it helps for like about 10 seconds. Okay. So again, Shimon says to Reuven, if I'm going to sell this land, I will sell it to you. Wait, 1 second. Did I say that they agreed on a price? No, they actually didn't. Sorry. Important point. They did not agree on a price. That's the key point in this case. They didn't agree on the price. Again, they didn't agree on the price. That was a mistake. So Shimon says to Reuven that when the time comes to sell my field, I'm going to give you a call. But they even made a kinyan, right? Reuven gave Shimon a pen. Shimon picks up the pen, makes a kinyan. He commits that when time comes to sell the field, Shimon is going to give Reuven a call. So now, again, Shimon says to Reuven, that if I'm going to be selling this field, it'll be to you, Reuven. And they made a kinyan on it. Also, and then guess what Shimon did? He sold it to Levi, son of a gun. After telling Reuven that he was going to sell him the field, and even picking up Reuven's pen to show how serious he was, he then went and sold it to Levi. So says Rav Yosef that Reuven, actually, it's Reuven's, not Levi's, because Shimon had made a kinyan, he had committed to selling it to Reuven. But Abai says to Rav Yosef, but 1 second, but they never discussed price. Remember, as I clarified, they had not discussed price. And how do we know that whenever price was not discussed, then there is no kinyan? This now that we learned in our Mishnah, that a Jewish wine monger who sells his wine to an Oved K'chavim, Pasak ad sheloi modad. So if they had already agreed on price before the Oved K'chavim Betzim is Kona b'Mashicha, Dam of Mutarin, so then Reuven can accept, right? The Jewish winemonger can accept payment, meaning even though the Oved K'chavim is going to be Kona it, and then he's going to make it into Yei Nesach. But even though the Oved K'chavim will make it into Yei Nesach, the Jewish winemonger can still receive payment for it, because since they had already discussed the price, they had agreed on a price, the Oved K'chavim then made a kinyan on it when he picked up the wine, So that was a valid kinyan. And what the Ovid Chum, as we learned yesterday, what the Ovid Chum acquired was kosher wine. Later on, he made a yenesich, but at that point it was already his. At that point, he had already owed the yid the money. So the yid can accept the money, even though at the time it is now currently a nesech, but the Ovid Chum was already chayiv to pay the yid prior to being a nesech. So the kinyan worked because they had already agreed on a price. Modar actually posak, but if the Ovid Chum picked it up before they had agreed on a price, Dam of Asur and Reuven cannot accept the yid cannot accept the payment if they hadn't yet discussed price, because they hadn't yet discussed price. So then it's not a wholehearted kinyan, right? Kilu. I'm going to drink some more water. If they had already discussed the price, okay, it's going to be $50 for the wine. And the Ovid Chum says, oh, okay, fine, great. That price sounds great. And then the Ovid Chum picks it up. So he's being koneh the wine, knowing the price, knowing that he's now going to have to open up his wallet and give $50. And he makes the kinyan wholeheartedly after having agreed to the terms. So it's a proper kinyan. But if they had never discussed price, so when the Ovid Chum picks it up, he still has in mind, like, I'm not committing, because, like, what if he says $1,000? Like, that would be just ridiculous. I'm not paying that. So because they hadn't discussed price, so by the Ovid Chum picking it up, he's not really wholeheartedly making a kinyan and being mischayiv to pay, because he doesn't yet know what it is. What if the yid says, like, oh yeah, that's the most expensive wine I have, $1,000? He's like, whoa, wait, okay, I don't want this. So only once they agreed on the price can the kinyan be a real kinyan. But prior to having agreed on a price, the kinyan is not a real kinyan. And therefore, going to drink more water. And therefore, in our case with Shimon's field and Reuven, so Shimon had told Reuven that, I'm going, when the time comes to sell the field, I'm going to sell you the field. And he even made a kinyan on it, made it official. But so long as they hadn't discussed price, I wonder if maybe the kinyan is actually the opposite even. I wonder if interesting. Meaning, I imagine that the kinyan that we're talking about is the kinyan suitor. I imagine that's the point, is the kinyan suitor. Meaning, I don't think we're talking about paying money over here. So it could actually be that Reuven is actually, meaning, so Shimon gives Reuven his pen, and Reuven picks up the pen to say, I'm committing to buy the field from you at the right, at the time. Maybe that's the point. But anyway, it's hard to tell who's thing, but since we're talking about price, I imagine that we're talking about Reuven, because he's the one who, so I think the point maybe is that Shimon gives Reuven his pen, Reuven then picks up Shimon's pen, committing to buying Shimon's field. But the thing is that when he made that kinyan, it wasn't wholehearted, because he didn't know. Shimon could say $10 million. Shimon can give a ridiculous, a quote, a crazy price, and Reuven's going to be like, wait, actually, I don't want this. I don't want to commit to this. So the point being that if they had discussed price, it's not a valid kinyan. So just like we saw in our Mishnah, that price would have to be discussed first in order for the kinyan, when the Ovid Chum picks up the wine in our example, to be a valid kinyan. So also in the case of Shimon and Reuven and the field, whatever kinyan was made there was not a valid kinyan, since no price was discussed yet. And therefore, Rav Yosef said that Reuven gets the field. Abaye argues that from our Mishnah, it would appear that since they hadn't discussed price, whatever kinyan was made between Shimon and Reuven was not a valid kinyan, and therefore, when Shimon sells it to Levi, that is valid, because there was no effective kinyan between Shimon and Reuven. It's now effective Gemara Ma'aveh Nusari Paskin, be passing like of Yosef, that it's Reuven's, or like Abaye, who says that it should be Levi's. Ma'aveh, what do you mean how do we passing? Kidikar Minun. Well, Abaye asked the compelling question that based on our Mishnah, it would seem that they would have had to add discuss price in order for it to be a valid kinyan and for Shimon and for the field to have been committed to Reuben. So Dilma Chumra Diyanesach Shani, but the Gemara suggests, well, maybe because our mission is talking about Yenesech, maybe it's particularly stringent, and that's why they would have to discuss price first. But maybe in the case of Shimon and Reuven in the field, even without discussing price, it would be valid. So Tashma coming here. Tam Ravidi Bar Oven says Ravidi Bar Oven Uva Hava Be'Rav Chizda Be'Rav Huna, that there was a Maise by Rav Chizda, and then Rav Chizda gets brought it to Rav Huna. Ufashte Meha did Tanya, and they answered it from the following brisa. So this is actually a little bit of a tricky brisa to explain, but hopefully we'll get it right. Okay, so this is talking about, let's say Shimon is like a fruit monger, okay, and he's selling some fruits to Reuven. Okay? So Shimon sends his fruits to Reuven, and the fruits are laden on donkeys and on schleppers, on human schleppers. And it says, Moshe Chamor V'Fayalav. So now, when the fruits arrive at Reuven's, he pulls them. He pulls the donkeys laden with the fruits, and the schleppers laden with the fruits. And he brings them into his house. And now in his home are donkeys laden with fruits and humans laden with fruits as well. This is important that the donkeys and the humans are still laden with the stuff, because since they are still laden, there is no kinyan meshicha, right? The kinyan meshicha would have to be directly on the fruits, not on the people schlepping or the donkey schlepping the fruits. So therefore, there was no valid kinyan meshicha yet, since the donkeys and the schleppers are still schlepping the fruits. So again, Moshe Chamor V'Fayalav. So Reuven brings in, he pulls in the donkey drivers. I assume the donkey drivers with the donkeys and laden with the fruits. Ufayalav and the schleppers, and Reuven brings them into his house. Bein Pasak ad Shalom Adar. So regardless of if maybe they agreed on the price, if now Reuven and Shimon are negotiating and they agree on the price, but they're still laden on the donkey, on the schleppers. They hadn't yet actually taken them down and measured them out, so there was no effective kinyan yet. Uvein modad achlo pasak, or if they even took off the fruits and everything and put them down and measured them out and everything, but they hadn't yet agreed on a price. Lo kana v'shneim yichol machzor bain. So there's no kinyan yet. Since at the time that they agreed on a price, they hadn't yet actually made any, they were still laden on the people, on the donkeys, or alternatively, even once they were taken off the donkeys, if they hadn't yet agreed on price. So they could still both be choser. Now, what's interesting here as well is that, meaning immediately after they take the fruits off of the schleppers, off of the donkeys, since they're inside of Reuben's house, his reshus would memela be koneh. But since they hadn't yet agreed on a price, there's no valid kinyan yet, and either party can say, you know what, I don't want this. Perkon v'echnison l'soch beiso. Okay. Now, if they unloaded the schleppers and the donkeys and they're now in his house, okay. So posak ad shalom madad. So immediately, once they decide on a price, remember the fruits have been taken off of the people, of the donkeys, they're now in his house. So immediately upon agreeing on a price, immediately his chotzer, his reshus, would be koneh, and immediately the kinyan would be chal for Reuven. Mazel tov, he owns the fruits. Right? Even though they haven't measured them out or anything, it doesn't matter, because since they're in his house, in his rishus, and they agreed upon the price, they're Reuven's. And they cannot, nobody can renege. Modar ad shelo pasak. Now, even if they measured out the fruits and everything like that, but they hadn't yet agreed on a price, both parties can be choser. So we see that even in a context a context other than yein nesech, even in a context other than yein nesech, deciding on a price is key, is important. And the kinyan can only be chal once a price has been agreed upon. And therefore, to tie it back in to the scenario with Shimon and Reuven and the field, since Shimon and Reuven had never discussed price and had not agreed on a price, the kinyan that Reuven made, the commitment to buy Shimon's field, is not valid since they had agreed on a price. And when Shimon sells it to Levi, it's Levi's. Now says the Gemara, de Omar Le'lechaver. So if Shimon says to Reuven, similar, similar to the first case with Shimon and Reuven. So Shimon says to Reuven, if I am going to sell my field, I'm going to sell it to you b'mei zuzeh, for 100 zuzes. That's what the field costs. 100 zuzes. And Reuven says that sounds givaldig. And they made a kinyan. I guess Shimon gives Reuven his pen. Reuven picks up the pen, and now he's been kona the field. Keilu, I guess. The Kona, I guess, in the future, at the time, when the time comes, he's going to buy. Fine. I assume that that's the point. So Reuven agrees on 100 zuzes. Sounds good. They make a kinyan. And that is that. Now, also Zabna le'inish achrino b'mei ve'esrin. But then, Shimon goes and sells it to Levi for 120. So Rav Kana says, look, it belongs to Reuven. Reuven was kona it because they had talked about a price. Reuven had agreed on the price. He had made a kinyan suitor on it. They had agreed that Reuven would be the buyer. It's a proper kinyan. They had agreed on price. So it's Reuven's, it's not Levi's. I hope that I'm understanding this kinyan thing right. I think, right, because the whole point is he didn't actually sell it to Reuven. He was committing to, in the future, selling it to Reuven and making a kinyan on that. I assume that's from the fact that we're talking about agreeing on a price, usually, right, agreeing on a price means for Reuven to be like, that, for Reuven to say, yeah, that a price sounds fair, and for Reuven to make the kinyan. I hope I'm understanding that correctly. Anyways, so they made such a kinyan. And then Shimon goes and sells it to Levi. So it says if Kahana belongs to Reuven, they already agreed on a price, made a kinyan, so it belongs to Reuven. Maskflurb, Yaakov Minai Pekod. But Yaakov Minai Pekod says no. Haizuze Ansu, very interesting. Shimon received an offer he couldn't refuse, not like a Godfather kind of offer you couldn't refuse. Nobody's life was in danger, but basically what Shimon had committed to Reuven was to sell the field for 100 zuzes, meaning what Shimon was saying to Reuven is, look, I'm not ready to sell my field right now. I mean, if Shimon was ready to sell Reuven his field now, he just would have sold it. The point is, Shimon says, look, I'm not ready to sell my field. As things stand, I'm not. Here's where things stand, says Shimon to Reuven. Where things stand right now, with current realities and things like that, I'm not actually currently ready to sell my field. I imagine at some point I will sell my field, but not right now. I'd imagine that what I'd want is, excuse me, 100 zuzes, and that all sounded great. And they made it, they made a kinyan on sort of given current realities. If nothing, so long as nothing unexpected happens, Shimon says, look, I project that although I'm not ready to sell it right now, maybe in a few years I'll be ready to sell it. 100 zuzes sounds right, and they kind of commit to that. But out of left fields comes Levi saying to Shimon, I'm going to offer you 20% more than you expected. You expected to get 100 zuzes for the field. I'm giving you 120. And Shimon's eyes light up. And Shimon says, 120 zuzes? That changes things. This is a whole new ball game. And that kind of like does like a quantum orbit change kind of thing, right? So therefore Rav Kahana is saying, well, Shimon already committed to Reuven. Shimon committed to Reuven, living in a reality where the field is worth 100 zuzes. But all of a sudden he lives in a reality where the field is worth 120 zuzes. And Shimon says, in this reality, I'm selling it to Levi. Shimon had only committed to Reuven so long as everything remains the same. But all of a sudden there was a curveball and things changed. And now Shimon has an opportunity to make more money than he thought he would. And therefore Shimon is allowed to accept the 120 zuz payment from Levi. I do wonder if maybe he should have gone to Reuven first and said, hey, this is the offer I received, But it sounds like whatever, we're saying that even though he didn't, okay, maybe it would be nice for him to do, but he doesn't have to. Okay? Right, so again, Maskefler of Yaakov min Apkod, Yaakov min Apkod asks, Hai Zuze Ansu, that Shimon is not bound by the initial commitment that he had to Reuven. You could also Zuzi Ansu, literally onus. What's onus? To be forced. Shimon was really planning to sell it to Reuven, but all of a sudden Levi's offer forced him, sort of, the offer of 120 zuz kind of forced him to accept it. But so even though he was willing to, he was planning to do the deal with Reuven, but he was almost the amount of money forced him into the deal with Levi. Feels like Rav Yaakov min Apkod, and Allah is like Rav Yaakov min Apkod. Sheesh. Wow. Sheesh. It's not so posh recording without a voice, I'll tell you. It happens from time to time. Omerlei. Sheesh. If Shimon says to Reuven, or I guess either one of them says to the other, that the price that will agree to the price as evaluated by 3, basically what it means is it's like it's reference to Bezdin. That as Bezdin were to evaluate, in the Bezdin you go based on majority. So if 2 say one price and one of them says a second price, so it would go based on the one with majority support. But if what they say is as said by 3, not as evaluated by 3, but as said by 3, it means a unanimous saying. The 3 would have to agree. The 3 people who they're consulting with would have to unanimously agree on the price. If he says as 4 evaluate, well, since he's mentioning 4 and not 3, if it was reference to Bezdin and majority rules, he would have said 3. The fact that he's saying 4, he's saying that I want the opinion of 4. And therefore it means Adami Barba until I have all 4 of them agreeing on a price. Right? He wants to hear the same price from 4 people. And certainly if he says as 4 people say, it means that they would have to agree unanimously. If sheesh. If one of them said, as three people evaluate, and three came and evaluated it, and the other one says, let's get three others. I think that they're better. So I'm Papa, okay, so Papa says that the other guy could say, I want the other three to evaluate. How do we know that this other group of three knows better than the first group of three? I mean, it's 3 and 3. Well, who knows that these are better? Maybe the first group was a better group. That we don't know which group is the better group. And therefore, I guess, let's just go based on the first group. All right, friends. So now we get up to the next section of today's daf, the section about Neetzoke, the section about when you have a stream connecting two bodies of water. Sounds pretty like big, like a sea, but we're not necessarily talking about a sea. We can even be talking about pouring from one vessel to another vessel, and with the stream connecting the contents in the target vessel and the contents in the source vessel. Maybe we could say that. You have the source vessel where it's being poured from. You have the target vessel, which is collecting the contents being poured from the source vessel. And you have the stream streaming from the source vessel to the target vessel. So now, Zokt the Mishnah. I think I'm just gonna, I keep on trying to do different things with my voice. Maybe I'm just gonna go with whatever voice comes out. Whatever voice comes out is the voice that we're gonna work with. Let's try that. You hear that? We've seen this before. That if you have a Jewish winemonger, and he's selling wine to an Ovid Kochavim client. An Ovid Kochavim comes into the shop and he says to the Yid, Yiddo, can you please sell me some wine? Sell me 700 milliliters of wine, please. And he takes out the Ovid Kochavim takes out his flask, opens it up, and the Yid goes to his wine barrel and he starts pouring into a funnel. And the funnel is funneling into the flask of the Ovid Kochavim. And Kacha, the Jewish winemonger, is pouring wine by way of his funnel into the flask of the Ovid Kochavim. Kivaldi, that'll be $50, please. Great. The Ovid Kochavim gets his wine. The Ovid Kochavim leaves. In comes a Yid. Let's call him Moshe. Moshe comes in and he says, I'd like some wine. So Ruvain, so the winemonger, the Yid, says, okay. He goes to his barrel. Moshe opens up his flask, and the Yid goes to the same barrel that he poured from to the Ovid Kochavim, takes out his same funnel that he used for the Ovid Kochavim, and he's pouring wine through the funnel, this time into the flask of the Yid. And what the Mishnah says is that if in the funnel there was a few drops left over from the previous client, from the Ovid Kochavim, well then the wine that is being poured into Moshe's flask is a nesach. So let's read it inside. Notos amashbech. So if the Yid, the winemonger, takes his funnel, And he funnels wine into the flask of Inovei Kuchov. And then he uses the same funnel to funnel wine into the flask of a Yid. If there is leftover wine in the funnel from when the wine was funneled into the flask of the Ovik Chavim, also. Well, then the wine being funneled into the flask of the Yid is also. The Gemara is going to explain why. Hamayre, or discuss why. Hamayre mi kli el kliya she'ira mimenu muter ve'she'ira l'sochel also. Okay, the Gemara is going to discuss this as well. That if a person who is the person, the Gemara is going to talk about it. But basically, let's say you have a vessel of wine, of kosher wine, and you're pouring the kosher wine from the source vessel into a target vessel, and we're saying that as she'ir mimenu, the wine in the source vessel is mutter. The she'ir the socho also, but the wine in the target vessel is osir. The Gemara is going to have to explain why the wine in the source vessel is mutter and the wine in the target vessel is osir. Says the Gemara, Tananosim, we learn over there in, I think, or Mikvah is probably right. In Tyrus. Look at that. Yeah, I remember I had a friend over here, Manu Gershon, and he was learning Hilchus Mikvos, and he was telling me about Katafris, the big Toisfis, and Daf Tezayin of Masechta Gittin. I got his phone number. I wanted to talk to him, but I don't think he has WhatsApp. I got to talk to him on the phone. That's complicated. Anyways, then also we learned in a Mishnah in Tyrus, Neetzoke v'Katafris u'mashk tefech eino chibur lo letuma v'lo letayre shish hashboyin chibur letuma v'letayre. Woo, shish! What a Mishnah. So Neetzoke is, of course, as we've been talking about. So let's say you have, so I've been talking about, let's say Coca-Cola, right? But how about this? Let's say you have what does Rashi say? I think Rashi even gives an example. What's the example that Rashi gives? Kilach tzínor abel malamat miskiva. Okay, oh, that was for that. Okay, but let's say you have a body of water below, like a pool of water below, and that water is tameh. And then you have like a body of water above, and they're being connected by the stream from the body of water above that's connecting it. So we're saying that the stream that's connecting the tameh water below and the tar water above, that stream is not going to connect them to make everything above it tameh. A katafris is that if it wasn't like a stream of water pouring, but if it was like coming down like a mountain or something like that, right? Like a stream flowing down a mountain. So you have a body of water at the top of the mountain, you have a body of water below the mountain. So that stream streaming down the mountain would not connect to two bodies of water. And also a moist surface, right? So if you have like water gathered in one location and water gathered in another location, and in between the two locations, I imagine they're not too far from each other, there's kind of the area between them is moist. That moist area would not connect those two waters that are gathered. Okay. So a Neetzoke, right, the stream of water connecting two bodies of water, katafris, or like water flowing down a mountain, for example, umashke tofeach, or moisture between two collections of water, eino chibur is not a chibur, lo letuma, not for tuma. So, like as I said, if there's like tuma in the lower body of water, it won't affect the upper body of water. For lo letayra, nor for tyra. And I think what Rashi gave as an example for this is that mashkin tushin v'noga tome b'tachtun Oh, okay, so that was, okay, fine. Right, exactly. So that was the example that I gave earlier, that if the bottom body of water is tummy, it won't affect the upward. And then Rashi is below the tire. Right. So I think if I understand correctly, what this is talking about is like if the lower body of water has less than 40 sa, so it's not kosher as a mikvah. But it's connected by way of the stream to a body of water above. And by way of the connection, if you say that it's all one body, then it would be 40 sa. But we say that Neetzoke is not going to be a chibur, and we won't consider it, that lower body with less than 40 sa, to be a kosher mikvah. Ashborin, says Rashi, is like cracks in like salted earth, right? So if you have like dry earth and there's like cracks in the earth and water collects in there, chibur l'tumah v'latayr is, right? So if you have water on, I find this correctly, there's water filling up the cracks, and you have tumah at one end of the crack, whatever. So it'll make all of the water in the crack tameh, and if it's ta'or, then all the water in the crack would be ta'or, something like that. Now, Ravuna says, Ravuna, Neetzoke v'katafris umashku tofech chibor l'ninyan nesach. Says Ravuna that while these things are not, right, the Neetzoke, the katafris, the mashku tofech, while they are not a chibor when it comes to mentira, they are a chibor when it comes to yain nesach. And therefore, if you're pouring wine from a container, from a source vessel into a target vessel, and the wine in the target vessel is yain nesach, you'd have to be concerned about the wine coming from the source vessel as well. Says, how do you know this? If you're going to tell me, well, from the fact that we have that Mishnah in Tyrus, from the diuk in the Mishnah in Tyrus, Neetzoke v'akatafris umashke tofech eino chibur lo l'tumah v'lo l'tayr, because the Mishnah says that Neetzoke and katafris and mashke tofech is not a chibur when it comes to tumah and tayr. The tumah v'latayr to have a chibur. Okay, it's not a chibur when it comes to tumah and tayr. But I'll say that for yain nesach, however, it should be considered a chibur. For yain nesach, it should be considered a chibur. But ema seifa. But I'll tell you the seifa of that brisa, of that Mishnah, ha'ashboyim, when it comes to these cracks in the earth and there's water in the cracks, chibur l'tumah v'latayra is considered connected for tumah and tayra. Right, so you have these like cracks in the earth, and they're filled with water, and it's all right, and all the water in the crack is considered one body of water. So the tumah of the tayru da'avechibur l'ninyan nesach lo. But you tell me that for tumah and tayru would be considered one body of water, but not for yain nesach. If you're being medayik from the reisha that Neetzoke katafris ma'im tofech is not a chibur by tumah and tayru, implying that it is a chibur by yain nesach, well, then you'd also have to be medayik from the seifa by the Ashborin that it is a chibur for tumah tayr, but then you would have to say, is it not a chibur for yain nesach? But that wouldn't make sense. If it's a chibur for tumah tayr, it should also be a chibur for yain nesach. So elamea lekalamash mamina. Rather, we can't be medayik anything from that Mishnah. So the Gemara tries to prove Ravuna's point from our Mishnah. Tanan notol es amashbech badat lesoch tzulchisash avek kochofe. Draso badat lesoch tzulchisash shaiso. So our Mishnah had said that if the yid, the winemonger, had taken his funnel and he had used the funnel to funnel wine into the vessel of a kochov, and then he used that same funnel to funnel wine into the vessel, into the flask of a yid. So im yesh by akeves yayin also. So the Mishnah says, if on the funnel there is still a shtickle wine left over from when the wine was funneled to the Ovik Kochavim, if after funneling wine to the Ovik Kochavim, the wine is not being funneled to the Yid, and there's still a shtickle wine left in the funnel, so we said the wine going to the Yid is aser. Ha'akeves yain b'may kamitzer. Why, asked the Gemara, why is the wine on the funnel aser? How did it become aser? La b'Neetzoke, shma min Neetzoke chibur. No, chever. How did that wine become a shish? Aser, right? Kilu, the Yid, the winemonger, he had his kosher wine. He poured it through his kosher vessel, funnel, into the flask of the Ovik Kochavim. Now, the Ovik Kochavim's flask was Yein Nesach, granted. And when the wine lands in the flask of the Ovik Kochavim, it becomes Yein Nesach. What does it have to do with the drops of wine in the funnel of the Yid? So the Gemara wants to suggest, I'll tell you what it has to do. Neetzoke. That when the wine is pooling and gathering and collecting in the flask of the Ovik Kochavim, and it's Yein Nesach, and there's a stream connecting that Yein Nesach to the barrel that the kosher wine is coming from via the funnel, all of it is becoming Yein Nesach, and that wine that's left over in the funnel is actually Yein Nesach wine that became aser via its connection to the Yein Nesach in the flask of the Ovik Kochavim. Did you get that? Please tell me yes. So we want to say that Neetzoke chibur, and that's how the wine in the funnel became tameh, is because it was connected to the via the stream to the wine in the flask of the Ovik Kochavim. Tani Rebchia sheprosatu tzluchiso. We saw this the other day on Daf Nunvav. That actually says Rebchia that no, the wine in the funnel is not also because of Neetzoke. It's also because as the wine was collecting in the flask of the Ovik Kochavim, and there was more and more wine was going to the flask, the wine level was rising until it actually touched the funnel itself, and the funnel itself was now submerged in the Yein Nesach, and that's why if there's wine still on the funnel, when it is then used to funnel wine into the flask of the Yid, that's why it's a problem, because there's literally Yein Nesach on the funnel, because it literally was submerged in Ovik Kochavim's Yein Nesach. That's why it says Rebchia. But what if the wine level did not rise up until it reached the funnel? We would say that there's no Neetzoke. It's dafka because the wine was actually literally touching the funnel. But otherwise, we would not say Neetzoke. So Tifsho did Neetzoke no chibur. So let's say that we don't say Neetzoke chibur, unlike Ravuna. Like prosatu tzluchiso Tifsho lach. No, the Gemara knows that if it was prosatu tzluchiso, that if the wine rised up until it was touching the funnel, obviously that wine would be considered Yein Nesach. The also, of course, it's also Neetzoke tibai, but the Gemara simply is not sure if Neetzoke would be a connection. It knows for sure that if the wine was literally touching the funnel, the wine in the funnel would be also. But the Gemara is uncertain about whether Neetzoke is chibur or not. Water break. Tashma, come in here. Hamayra mikli likli. Oh, so our Mishnah had said, if you are pouring wine from a source vessel into a target vessel, as shemayre mimenu mutter, the wine in the source kli is mutter. Hadebene beni aser, the implication being that the wine in the source vessel is mutter, but the wine in between the vessels and the stream is also would be a nesech, shmamina nitzok chibur. Right, and therefore we could say Neetzoke is a chibur, and that's why the stream is also, because it's connected to the wine in the target vessel, which is the nesech. But if we're saying that it's all connected, and therefore the stream between the source vessel and the target vessel is yenesech, well, the wine in the vessel, in the source vessel, is also connected to the stream and to the yenesech. The wine in the source vessel should also be asur. The Gemara answers, that's not a problem, because what's going on is he's pouring the wine in spurts. So you have the source vessel. Excuse me. You have the source vessel, and he pours a shtickle from the source vessel. Before the stream hits the target vessel and becomes the nesech, he stops the pour. Which means that by the time the wine hits the target vessel and becomes the nesech, it's no longer connected to the source vessel, but there's still the stream that hasn't yet finished landing in the target vessel. So that stream will still be yenesech, but the wine in the source vessel would still be kosher since you've already cut off the stream. Mikomakom nitzok chibur. Okay, so we say, okay, fine. So the wine in the source vessel remains kosher, but we're saying that the stream itself would be yenesech. So we see Neetzoke would be considered a chibur, and if he would not have stopped the flow, then yeah, even the wine in the source vessel would be yenesech because of Neetzoke. By the time it came a seifa, but 1 second, what do we say at the very end of the Mishnah? As she'ira l'socho hu de asir, that the wine in the source, in the target vessel, is asir. What's the implication of that, friends? Ha de beni beni shari. But the wine between the two vessels, the stream, is permitted. That would imply Neetzoke eno chibur. Okay, so this seifa of the Mishnah is useless, because from the first part it would imply Neetzoke chibur, the second part implies Neetzoke eno chibur. Chev, I'm sorry, my voice, I push it. It's just push it, not there. I'm sorry. Tashma, coming here. Hamayr michovis lebor. Somebody who pours from a barrel into a pit. Kiluach hayored misvas chovis lemato aser. So the stream that's coming from the lip of the barrel that the wine is being poured from, the stream is aser. Tigmar of sheishes ba'avikochom amayr dasimikocho. It says of sheishes, yeah, but this isn't talking about Neetzoke. This is talking about avikochavim who's pouring the wine, and it's because the avikochavim is pouring the wine is coming from his koach. That is why the wine is considered yenesech. The stream is yenesech. Avikochavim amayr afilu gavo tichavlisa nami mitzer. Well, if it's the avikochavim who's pouring, then shouldn't we say that even the wine in the barrel is also us? Koach the avikochavim midir abananu the aser. Well, the koyach of the Ovik Kochavim, the fact that it's coming from the strength of the Ovik Kochavim, that he's the one pouring, that's only also midir Rabbanon. How the Nafak Livroi, Gazu Rabbanon, how the Ligavoy, Gazu Rabbanon, the rabbis only made a gezerah regarding the wine that was already poured out of the vessel, the stream. But the wine in the vessel itself, the rabbis did not make a gezerah about it, and therefore the wine in the vessel remains kosher. We also Rav Chisda said to these wine mongers, when you measure wine for Avdei Chom katfe katufe, do it in spurts, right? Don't make sure that the there's never a direct stream between your vessel and the vessel of the Chum Inami and Nafse Naputse, or like throw the wine out of the vessel. So again, there's never a direct stream between your vessel and the Chum's vessel. Rashi wants to say from here that we seem to pass in like Rav Huna of Neetzoke Chibur. Tosfos disagrees and says we don't say Neetzoke Chibur. Okay, anyways, yeah, I don't think anybody cares about the Machlekes Rashi and Tosfos right now. I think I just need to get through this stuff. Rava said to these people pouring wine, when you pour the wine, an Ovikram should not assist you in pouring the wine. How come? Well, because Dilma Mishtalisu, because maybe you'll get tired, Vishudisu lay ole because if you get tired, then you might end up leaning all of the weight of the barrel on the Ovikram, then that means that effectively the Ovikram is the one pouring the wine, and that's a problem. I think that, did we discuss this? We discussed it in the past, I think, but anyways, oh, sheesh. God. Okay. Sheesh. Okay, so you have one barrel that's filled with wine, and you want to transfer the wine from one barrel to another barrel, and for some reason you don't want to pour it. So what you do is, sheesh. Normally it would be okay to describe it, but I just push it. I'm sorry. Anyways, you like drill kind of like a hole in the side of the barrel, let's say, and then you take this like, take like the letter V, an inverted V, or like a capital A without the connector in the middle. And you make a straw kind of like that, or if you imagine just taking a straw and like bending it in half, but like with the liquid still being able to flow from one side to the other. And you take this V and you like stick one side in the source barrel and you stick the other side in the, first what you do is you then suck on this V in order to get the wine, some suction to get the wine flowing from the source barrel, and then you stick the other end of the V in the target barrel, and then all the wine just starts flowing from one barrel to the next. So now, so there was a person who was moving wine from one barrel to another using this gishto bas gishto. Also, now an Ovikram came and he placed his finger at the end of this V at the end that would have been going into the target barrel. So now the Ovikram is touching the wine at the end of the V. And Rava said all of the wine is also. So does this mean Shmas Mina Neetzoke Chibur? Does that mean that all of the wine is also because it's Neetzoke, because it's, the wine at the end of the V is connected to all the rest of the wine in the source barrel? Shani also, it's different over there. No, it's different over there. It's not necessarily a Neetzoke thing, but it's a technicality thing, which is that all of the wine in the source barrel is going to end up flowing through that V thing, and therefore the fact that there was Tumah at the end kind of affects all of the wine that is inevitably going to have to pass through there. When it comes to Kinishkinen, a Kinishkinen is like some kind of excuse me, I'm imagining some kind of like bong that has like a hookah kind of thing that has like lots of pipes coming out of it that you can like, a bunch of people can like suck at the same time. So imagine that, but for like wine. So you have some kind of like central like repository of the wine, and people can like suck from like these different tubes coming out of it. Sorry, but it's only permitted if the yid stops sucking first. But if the Ovikram stops sucking first, it's a problem, because then like the wine is going to go back in and that'll be a problem. Rabbi Bar Ravuna, Rabbi Ravuna went to Reish Galusa, Sharlu, the Mishnah B'Kinishkin, he allowed them to drink from a Kinishkin. Rabbi Ravuna Gufe Ishte B'Kinishkin. Some say Rabbi Ravuna himself drank from the Kinishkin. Tosfos actually explains what this is. It's not talking about Rabbi Bar Ravuna was actually drinking with an Ovikram with a Kinishkin. That would be a problem, because what if the Ovikram finishes first? But rather, actually, it's a reference, says Tosfos, to a Gemara in Shabbos that says that, and things that nowadays, because of Churban Beis Hamikdash, things that are also Mishum Tanig are a problem, but Mishum Simcha are okay. And he's saying that a Kanishkanin is something that would not be also, and he was saying even he himself drank from the Kanishkan. Sheesh. Cheva, I'm really, really sorry about my voice today. Oh my gosh. Hopefully by tomorrow it'll be better. Anyways, today we discussed setting the price before the kinyan. So you must set the price before the kinyan for it to take effect, right? We had this example where Shimon was selling a field to Reuven, and they had made a kinyan, but no price was agreed upon. And Shimon then went and sold it to Levi, and that was okay because they had never agreed on a price at the time of the initial kinyan. And then a commitment to later sell at a particular price can be overwritten by a higher offer, because that initial commitment, even when they agreed upon a price, it made a kinyan, but that was assuming the initial price. But if somebody comes out of left field and all of a sudden is offering a much higher price, so then that could change things because the commitment was only given the reality at the time. Then we got into the sugya of Neetzoke. Whether Neetzoke is considered a chibur by Yenesech. Where Funa says yes, we tried to prove from where he knows it from. Rashi Taka Paskins like Rav Funa that Neetzoke is a chibur for Yenesech. Tosfos disagrees and says Neetzoke is not a chibur for Yenesech. Chevre, that was Daf Ayin Beis of Masechet Avodah Zarah. Again, apologies for my voice. I really hope that it'll be back for tomorrow so that we can get into things a little better. So have a great day. Cheers.